Hey, welcome everyone. It's Jürgen here at Polymash. Another one of our series on the Rodecaster Pro firmware update in 2020 and the new features that have been made available to us. So I'm excited to get started today in talking about optimizing the noise gate and how that helps both YouTubers, streamers, podcasters, and everyone who's gotten their hands on this unit. So with that, let's get started. All right, so the Rodecaster Pro release introduced some really cool features, and not the least of it, this ability to basically manage and edit effects on the unit. And that means that we can now, for the first time, really start to optimize this mixing console and tweak it for our podcasts, for live streams, and so forth. And I wanted to sort of revisit a little bit about why that's important, and today focus on how to fine-tune the noise gate and get the most out of that, because that's for live streaming. That's one of the amazing things, is that you can really optimize your voice, really optimize your settings, and make your live stream audio sound like it came out of a post-production studio, but without having to spend the time of going through post-production. So let's have a quick look at the features again, and sort of a quick just recap of what this means for us. So why would we want to be using the Rodecaster Pro? I know that a lot of live streamers are using it. I know that a lot of podcasters are using it. We've used it for on-site and a number of applications. And what I'll be talking about today is sort of specific to helping video production on the fly, maybe daily podcasters and people who don't want to go into the post-production modes that are often necessary. And so to optimize your voice for videos and live streams, really, there's sort of usually a couple of things involved. One is a noise gate that tries to suppress the ambient noise in the recording location that you're in. So maybe that includes a de-esser. And the thing is that most mixing consoles that you might have, even if you have a small, Behringer or some other model, or Mackie, a small mixer, very seldom are they chock full of effects like de-essers or compressors. And sometimes it takes a lot of outboard gear to configure a ability to record this live and to record a live video. So you would have to have an outboard de-esser or an outboard compressor or an expander in order to achieve some of the things that are sort of baked into the Rodecaster Pro as an all-in-one mixing console. So that's what I mean by optimizing for live video. There's no real EQ, an equalizer built into the Rodecaster Pro. I think that some of the things that you might be looking for can be achieved with a combination of the de-esser and the effects that are included. It's an exciter and sort of like what's called big bottom, and that adds a lot of sort of bass volume and the broadcasty kind of a sound, and that now too can be tweaked. And of course, there's a compressor built in, and what I want to cover today is sort of a cool trick to use the compressor for the noise gate. And if you guys are the audiophiles among you going, huh? I understand. It's about the software that comes with it and some of the spectral display and the display of the frequencies that are going through it, and that's what we're going to look at in a minute. But first, a recap around why this 2.1 beta. It's still in beta. It hasn't formally been released yet, and I've installed the beta on my Rodecaster. Of my Rodecaster Pro, I've been very happy with the quality of the beta. Often you sort of take a risk of it crashing. They do recommend that you don't do this for production work, but I've been very happy with the stability of it. I haven't had a single issue, basically, except for one thing, and that is that the ducking seems to still have not work as expected, and a number of people have talked about that. And we're in touch on Reddit and elsewhere with with Rode, and hopefully that gets fixed in the final release. But the 2.1 beta update has been an awesome update, and mostly because the effects are live editable on the console itself and editable through software. And that means that they now have given us some tools that can live on the desktop or on a laptop that allow us to shape the sound of the console as we're listening to it through our headphones. And that's a really awesome feature. And so it helps live streamers and YouTubers because it sort of allows us to create an instant broadcast-ready sound for our live streams and for our videos. And if you do have a podcast and you also occasionally record videos, I think it's great that you can basically take what you might do in Adobe Audition, usually where you might be doing post-production effects, and you can now pretty closely match the settings that you might have in Adobe Audition or that you might apply to your voice in Adobe Audition and match it during live streaming and phone calls and so forth, right? And so, I think that matching the podcast audio, is great. The fact that it's an all-in-one mixing console for live streams and that you can dial in guests on the phone and do a number of other things, as well as sort of recording an instant podcast while you're streaming. And there's a new feature to export to MP3. And, if we haven't covered it in the previous videos, we will dive into some of that in the future. But they're also, it's useful, the beta release is useful for podcasters as well, because, as I mentioned, these editable effects help us match what we're doing in live with our post-production settings. And so this concept that the Rodecaster Pro is built around, this ability to instantly produce a podcast on the fly, with interviews, that's especially useful. If, for example, you have a daily show, or if you have a podcast that you want to match. So, I appreciate, where they're going with continuous improvement for the console, because, it matters a lot to get that sound, similar. And but today's focus, what I wanted to do is talk about getting the most out of the noise gate, because that's sort of a contentious topic for some audiophiles, is that you would apply a noise gate to your recording before it's actually getting saved into post-production. That's usually a no-no. You're trying to work with the raw audio and not destroy or have any destructive editing happening there. And before this firmware release, Rode just had a single preset for a noise gate, and it was a kind of a one-size-fits-all. You couldn't tweak it. And by tweaking it, what I mean is apply as little as is necessary for your situation. And, if you're working Adobe Audition, for example, and you're doing a noise profile, it, doesn't reduce, heavy-handedly. What it reduces is only as much noise or as little noise as possible, and leaves you with the purest possible audio without the noise that you could have. And that's now possible on the Rodecaster Pro as well, because of some of this feature. So let's dive into how do we go about fine-tuning the noise gate, and this weird thing that I said at the beginning, how the hell does a compressor help with that? And what I mean by that is that the Rodecaster software now actually includes in the compressor view a live depiction of the volume levels that your audio is generating. So I'm going to be quiet here for a minute, because as you see, as I'm speaking, this is the software version of what you might see ordinarily on the display panel of the Rodecaster Pro. And I'm going to be quiet for a minute. And right now, you can see by this little empty gap that my noise gate is turned on. And right now my AC is off. So just to illustrate, what I'm going to do is turn off all of the effects. So I'm going to turn off the noise gate. I'm going to turn off the big bottom and the oral exciter and the high pass filter. And so now if I go back to the compressor, now I'm going to be quiet again, and you will see that there is some noise in my environment. So maybe at 65, 66 decibels, this level here. And I actually know that when my AC is off right now. So I've got this really cool little app that I wanted to showcase. In that app, let me just switch over to showcase a little noise generator app that I have. And it allows us to, it's called Fan Noise, and it allows us to generate some noise to emulate what you might ordinarily experience. So I'm going to hit play on that, and and generate some noise. And I'm doing that with another iPhone, so just bear with me for a moment. And while we're waiting, I'll let you check out the TM-Soft fan noise generator. So that's a way in which, when it's very quiet in my studio, and I'm in a kind of a noisy place, but this is a way in which I can basically start to generate and emulate my AC sounds. So I just turned it on, and I have a little speaker here on my desk, and now it's generating about 54 decibels worth of fan noise, which is when my AC is running, I'm kind of in a noisy environment. That's the level that I need to get rid of. So this pretty accurately reflects that when my AC is running, what the noise level is. And why is that important? Well, it allows me to, if I now turn on the noise gate, it allows me to sort of manipulate it. And I want to demonstrate a couple of things about how the noise gate actually works. So I know that my noise level happens at around 54 decibels. So that's the level that I need to sort of have the floor reduced to. You can see it here. So the threshold in my noise gate setting, I'm setting at exactly 54 decibels. But the other thing that makes a difference is the range. And if the range is too great, as you'll see in a minute, so I'm going to enable this noise gate. And you should have probably heard a difference. And let's look at the compressor. You can see it's greatly reduced, and there's just a little bit of a trace left on the bottom. And that's kind of what I'm looking for, because if I increase this to, to be very aggressive in the range setting, now all the noise is gone. You might think that's a good thing, but for me, it's not, because I want to remove only as little as necessary. And that's the secret that you can achieve with the range setting. So if I go to, let's say, 27 decibels, I can now just see sort of barely a trace on the very bottom. And that's kind of what I'm looking for. If I, for example, if I turn off my fan noise app, which I'm using here on the computer, so I'm going to turn that off, and we'll toggle back over. You can see that it now totally eliminates it. But I need to have my setting set in a way that when my air conditioner comes on, which I know that is sort of operating at a minus 54 dB level, that, in that scenario, it still filters out as little noise as is necessary for me to get a super clean recording and a super clean video sound. So does that make sense? So 27 seems to be good. Like if I went the other direction and I reduced the noise by 20 decibels, and I'll go back to the display view. And I've just turned on my fan noise generator. you see it's much lower. I mean, it's lowered it by just about 20 dB, but I'm trying to sort of push it down to where it just barely registers, and that way I feel I'm getting the best out of the noise gate. And I guess for my settings here, that winds up being just about 22 decibels. So I leave the noise gate enabled. I'm going to turn on the exciter again. You might hear a slight difference there. And I'm going to turn the big bottom on again, which is because otherwise my voice sounds like a child. No, but like that's the broadcast setting. And we're going to go in another video. We're going to go into some of the settings for both the aural exciter and the big bottom and how you can use that. I'll also turn on any sort of low rumbles that I might have in my house. The reverb setting I don't use, unless I want to scare people, when suddenly sound like I'm in a church. I don't use that sort of stuff on my videos. I just contradicted myself, I realize. And the compressor I use very rarely as well. And but if you do use the compressor in post-production, the fact that you can now use the software to fine-tune it is an awesome way to match your post-production settings. Again, that's the whole reason for undertaking this. So I hope that sort of made sense to you guys. I know that this can also be done using the built-in, and I'm just going to go back to the built-in displays that the Rodecaster Pro has. So you can do what we just did using the Rodecaster Pro, but it doesn't have the display and it doesn't show you the decibels of the noise that's happening in your room. Here's when it's quiet and with my AC off. So you can see that I've got some soundproofing to do. I also wanted to just the screens on when you configure each microphone. That is where the effects now live on the lower right. If you tap on that, you start seeing the effects for each channel. In this case, this is my microphone, and you can manipulate the compressor, noise gate, the ESSA, and everything that we just did using the app. You can do that on the device itself as well. So I'm hoping that, let me turn my fan noise back off and take one last check here on, and I'm going to be quiet for one more time and see whether this is working how I had envisioned it. And you might be able to tell already, this indicates that right now my AC is off. But that does it for today's video. I hope this gives you some things to play with and some ideas to play with when you want to fine-tune the noise gate on your Rodecaster Pro after you apply the firmware update. So signing off for now, this is Jürgen at polymash.com, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.